Hey everybody, welcome to the Diabetes Empowerment Summit. I am your co-host and founder of the summit, as well as founder of Diabetes Sound Meter Coaching and Love Yourself to Health group coaching membership. I am here with an amazing woman. I'm going to just read you a very quick bio about her, and we're going to get right into her story because I know she has so much wisdom to offer us. So Mônica Silveira is a psychiatrist, and her PhD is specific to mental health and diabetes. She has also been living with diabetes type 1 herself since she was 27 years old. So Mônica, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me down in Brazil. It's very exciting to have you here. How are you?
I'm good, Danielle. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very excited to be a part of this amazing event, Diabetes Empowerment.
Oh,
I'm
great.
happy to, yeah.
Well, I'm very excited to hear what you have to say. So I would love to know, and I think a lot of people out there would be interested in knowing that, well, you told me off the air that you were already pursuing your psychiatrist kind of studies, and then you were diagnosed with diabetes kind of in the middle of that. So how did that influence your studies? How did that take you down the road to where you are now?
I really started to think about study diabetes after my pregnancies.
Oh, okay. So how did kind of once that happened and your babies were born, and that's fantastic and amazing, how did beginning to really study the psychological effects of living with diabetes, first of all, how did it affect your care for your own diabetes? And then we'll kind of talk about how you treat patients nowadays.
In the beginning, I don't know if I didn't realize my own feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I can say I moved forward with my life, with my career, with my stuff in general. But in my pregnancy, I feel very scary. And that time I started to perceive the lack, and I put myself in a post-graduation in clinical internal medicine, not in psychiatry. I was working in type 1 diabetes care, and I started to observe patients and how endocrinologists deal with the emotional things, aspects, and I realized the huge lack and the lack in Brazil.
Yeah.
So I started to research people in the United States, and I found out Bill Polonsky, Lawrence Fisher, Marta Funel, and many other people who spend their lives studying the emotional issues related to diabetes. And I started to chat with some of them and talk about my plans. I would like to start the study. And I planned my part of my PhD in the United States, and I help. I developed the type 1 diabetes stress scale for Brazilian people, Brazilian version with Larry Fisher.
Wow.
So I start in Brazil this kind of approach, and we did a workshop. I invite people from all the states of Brazil. We started to talk about and study, and at the time we have psychologists, you have a nurse who study emotional aspects related to diabetes and the educational aspect related to diabetes. And this was a very start. We start from scratch in Brazil. Yes.
And they're lucky to have you there, though. And so when you brought, so actually Bill Polonsky is also going to be interviewed on this summit as well, which I'm very grateful for, because he is, I kind of call him, he's like the father, father of all of that kind of here in the United States, and definitely influenced me as well on my own journey on teaching about the mental and emotional aspects. And so when you brought that back, how did you, you created a workshop and all of that, but I guess really what I want to know, and probably people out there, let's just say, because the talk that you're giving, we talked about is, diabetes distress, diabetes burnout, things that are the mental and emotional kind of aspects of it. So if somebody is in that state, what are the tools that you teach them to, because I always say about burnout, this is my own opinion, is it's not about never experiencing it, because that's a hard goal. It's kind of about experiencing it less often and for less periods of time when you do experience it. That's what I try to teach about it. And I'm interested in what do you teach about it, and how do you teach your patients to kind of overcome that or work through that?
Yes, it's very common. I receive patients that some endocrinologists send it to me under the label of depression.
Yeah.
They are depressed, depressive. Many of them have depression. Many of them didn't have. It's only the emotional conflicts and only psychological suffering about to manage diabetes. That is what was very important for me to differentiate, because patients don't see me. I have burnout.
Right.
They come with me. I don't know what to do. My A1C is high. No matter what I supposed to do, my diabetes not change. And I think I help them to understand what is diabetes distress. Some people didn't accept easily diabetes. It's a kind of time to walk with patients, hear them, talk to them, for help them to understand the emotional aspect.
Yeah.
And I think this is very important, because many endocrinologists should work together, because
I agree.
Together,
Yeah.
because it's very important to work together. For example, I can talk about my experience. When I was diagnosed, I had an expectation at the beginning that my diabetes should be perfect. And many times it did not happen for everyone.
Of course.
And I asked myself at the time, what I'm doing wrong? These feelings frequently put us in a not resilient
mindset. Yes.
Mindset, but in a stuck. And
Yes, absolutely. And I love what you said about acceptance, because that's a really big word in my world, and everything that I teach is that's the thing you have to move into in order to begin building or cultivating a loving or compassionate relationship with your diabetes, versus a relationship that feels like you're constantly fighting. Because if you don't move forward with the acceptance, it's always going to feel like a fight. And I'm not saying, I think we all know that there's no, I like the word you said, perfect, too, because I don't like the word perfect. I always try to steer people away from the word perfect, because it's not really an achievable goal. And when we're working really hard to achieve a goal that we can't achieve, like you said, it creates stuckness. So essentially you're teaching them to differentiate between reality and this perceived kind of made up situation that people think they need to get to. I need to be perfect. I need everything to A1C and all my glycemic, everything, or else I've become a failure. Or else like you said, guilty. I feel shameful. This happens, all the time across all types of diabetes I see. And so one of the things that I like to teach people as far as kind of unconditioning that thought, that belief system, is self-care. And I don't know if self-care is as big of a thing or thought about in Brazil, or what you teach, but I teach about kind of building up your own trust in yourself. That's what I think self-care leads to, is showing up for yourself, doing little practices that are just a demonstration that you care for your well-being, that you value your well-being. And when you do that on a regular basis, it kind of builds up this resiliency, like you said. It builds up this feeling of confidence, like, oh, okay, I know I'm going to have bad days, and I know I'm going to have good days, and that's okay. I acknowledge that I have privilege of accessing my insulin and accessing technology, and that's very helpful. But I also acknowledge that I've done a lot of hard work, like you said, on myself. a lot of hard work on processing my own diagnosis and coming to acceptance. But one thing I also wanted to ask you, just come up while you were talking about, I was thinking about it. One thing that I needed to do, well, I was diagnosed as a child and I didn't really know much about grief. And I didn't go through well, I'm sure I went through a grieving process, but I was not aware of it. And so now as an adult, I went through it. I specifically went through a grieving process for myself to process the loss of, the childhood or the life that I had prior to diabetes. Do you talk about kind of grieving the diagnosis? Because I personally think, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but I have a lot of training in this field, and I feel like acknowledging that we must go through a specific grieving process for our diagnosis is key to us moving forward. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yes, I think this is very important. And many people don't understand the normal process of all the grieving. You need to, we feel sadness, anger, and we only overcome when you face these feelings.
Yeah.
And I think the professional should help, support. Yeah. It's normal people feel months or years. It's very common in teenager, especially when people is diagnosed in the teenager time.
Yeah, that's when I had my biggest problems. I was diagnosed at 8, but I didn't really start having the real problems until about 13. Once 13 hit, it was like, whoosh, it went crazy. So I agree with you. And so where does someone start with that process in your own, just to kind of acknowledge that they did lose something, and it's okay to, a lot of times they probably come to you, this is a guess, but they might be in that like denial phase, because I was in that phase for far too long in my own opinion. But how do you move through that? How do you face that? And how do you teach people to face that reality?
I think I need to talk, listen, and normalize this feeling. People don't be able to start to check their blood sugar before to understand the grieving and to overcome. Mm-hmm. Because there's this, it's a fight inside. Mm-hmm. It's not a cognitive process.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I like to talk about that too here. A lot of people want, a word is pragmatic here, kind of just like they want a step-by-step, like I can just read this book and do these steps and then everything's just going to be okay. And I laugh, not because it's funny, but because I know that that's not how it works. But I also know that it's completely possible to move through that process if you're willing to not be perfect. I think it goes right back to what we said before. Grieving is not perfect. It's not linear. It's not like you can just list the steps in like anger, denial, grief, sadness, and then they're just going to run through them like this, like perfect. It's not like that. And I love that you bring that up. You have to listen, but the word you said that I think is so meaningful is normalize it. Normalize it. We all go through this, and not just us with diabetes. Anyone who gets a diagnosis of any disease must go through a grieving process to move into that acceptance phase. And so, like, I actually have chills a little bit talking to you about it, because it's just it's so important to getting to a place where you can feel empowered, right? You can feel resilient. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so, so much. I enjoyed this immensely. I got to know you here in front of, everybody else is getting to know you too, but it's really been a pleasure. And thank you for taking the time out of your day, and thank you for helping people with diabetes the way that you do. Genuinely, it means more than you probably give yourself credit for, I would guess. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And,
thank you.